architecture and infrastructure to help drive the modernization of the Bureau across the service life cycle. I'm involved in putting together a governance process to actually make things happen, and also responsible for leading an innovation program. I'm particularly interested in this session because this is about getting things done, and we'll talk about that.
Kamal Haram. I work with the FDA. I'm an IT program manager in charge of standing up a platform as a service, software as a service program. I work for the CDRH Center, which is the Center for Medical Devices and Radiological Health. And most recently, I've been working at the FDA, trying to help kind of stand up this governance model for this platform and software as a service. Looking forward to working with you. Agility is at the heart of what we do at my center. Looking forward to contributing and hearing from you as well.
Okay, one last piece of housekeeping. There will be a survey available on the app, but it's not available until 5 minutes before the end of the session. So I'll tell you now, and then I'll remind you as we get close to the end of the session to please fill out the survey. So, continuous delivery, about getting things done. It's about changing the way we think, changing the way we behave, changing the way we interact on a way to get everything done. So what we've done in preparing this track is to take examples and plays from the Digital Services Playbook and kind of lay out a draft maturity model, with this session focused on the how of continuous delivery, whether it be agile development, DevOps, using now I lost my train of thought. Anything that it takes on the how of delivery. So we're going to talk in session 2 about the how do you get customers and stakeholders engaged. We're going to talk about user-centered design in session 2, and then in session 3, we're going to talk about all of those enabling functions that in government you need to have to make this work. And hopefully dispel some myths about how these things can't work in government. So I'm very pleased to have Mark Schwartz and Jeff Johnson here, who are two proven commodities in delivery of continuous services. Jeff with the Sentinel program and at the FBI. I know, Mark, you've been bringing out the ideas of how to contract differently for digital services, how to contract differently for agile development, and how to do it at scale. So I'm going to turn it over to Mark and Jeff. It's 10 minutes for you two to kick us off, and then we'll get into the breakout session.
Well, I'm hoping you're going to say continuous delivery is a bad idea, so we could have a little bit of disagreement and fighting here. Discontinuous delivery, let's go for it. This is perhaps the easiest presentation I could possibly make, because continuous delivery is just the right thing to do. I mean, we could stop there. The way I think about it, there are two things that I care about a lot. One is waste is bad, we don't want to have it. The second is responsiveness is good, we want to have a lot of that. Responsiveness in terms of we have a mission need, we have a deployed capability, there's a time in between those two things, and we want that time to be as short as possible. I'm sure, once again, Jeff's going to completely disagree with me on those two things. He's going to say waste is good, responsiveness is bad. It turns out that continuous delivery is, in many ways, the obvious choice for how to do things if you care about those two things. So lean theory, all about removing waste, shortening cycle times. Lean theory tells us that working in small batches is a good idea. You want to minimize work in progress. You want to move things through your pipeline as quickly as possible, increase throughput. And a great way to do that is you take a very small set of requirements, potentially just one requirement at a time, if you really have continuous flow, and you put it through a pipeline that gets it to production as quickly as possible. So here's a user need, we're going to flow it through a series of steps that gets it into production as quickly as possible, gets feedback on how it's working in production, goes back and changes things, and sets up this nice virtuous cycle. If you get stuff out quickly, you get reactions to it, you change it and improve it. So to get things to production very quickly, what you really need to do is automate everything, almost everything. So at USCIS, for every new project, we've set up a continuous delivery pipeline. For old projects like transformation, that's been going for a while, We have also set up a continuous delivery pipeline now. What that looks like is developers make changes to code very quickly based on our Lean and Kanban our Scrum and Kanban processes. When they make a change to the code, they check it in. Our continuous integration software automatically notices that there's been a change, rebuilds the whole system, runs all of the automated tests, automated regression tests, new tests, static code analysis to check on coding style direction, security tests, Section 508 compliance tests, all of it's automated. And if the code passes all of those tests, we have automated scripts that will deploy it into production. We have monitoring on production so we can watch what it's doing. It's all magic. And so going from that, let's say you take a really, really simple change. That's I think, the best way to think about it. Let's say you're going to make a really stupid little change to a web page that's in production. You just want to change a few fields on it or something. How long will it take you to get that into production? In our old model, you create a program around changing those fields. You put it through a governance process. It goes through the DHS acquisition review boards, whatever. You find a contractor. You develop your software, you deploy it to various test environments and staging environments, and you have teams of IV&V people come in and verify that the little changes were made right. And when you finally get it to production, it's 8 months later, something like that. With our continuous delivery pipeline, you make your change, you check it in, boom, lights start flashing, things happen, little monitoring screens show stuff going on. Little red dots turn to green dots, and boom, it's in production and people are using it right away. So that's what we're doing, and I think the case for it is compelling. There are some challenges in implementing it, and I guess that's what we should be spending plenty of time talking about today, all the challenges and the things that you have to learn in order to be able to do it. But the case for it, I think, is obvious.
Mark challenged me to disagree with him, so I guess I have to disagree with him.
You must be from customs.
My father's an attorney, so I can disagree with anybody on any topic. Doesn't matter.
I have a philosophy degree. I can disagree with everybody too.
Mark and I could probably go back and forth all day on this. The one thing that I disagree with Mark on is it's not magic, right? It is a daily, continuous discipline. Right? The key is responsiveness and feedback loops. Because feedback loops don't allow you to go back in time and correct the decision. They only allow you to make a better decision today. And you can only impact today. So how do you get the right information and make the best decision you can today? And I want to just share a little bit for those of you who aren't familiar with the case study. Everybody, or a lot of people, seem to be familiar with the failure case studies, and that's what seems to be getting all the writing and still gets a lot of press. I talk with folks that are adjunct professors at American University and National Defense University, and they're still teaching VCF. I have the Dilbert cartoon that came out in 2005 about you spent $170 million on this software code and not any of it's useful. Yes. That is the way we've done acquisitions. Hey, we're gonna define this big project. We're gonna have the IV&V guys come in and make sure that it's the right thing to do. They're gonna spend a lot of time and money reviewing documentation, and we're gonna assure ourselves that we have the right design and we're doing the right thing. And then we're gonna go out and we're gonna buy a bunch of other contractors to build it, and then we're gonna try to roll it out. So that obviously didn't work for VCF, and I won't talk more about that because you can read about it in several places. The FBI's response to that is we didn't have enough oversight. We didn't have enough. We didn't have enough people watching the watchers, right? So let's go ahead and let's build a big PMO. The Sentinel program kicked off in 2005. I arrived at the FBI from the financial services sector in August of 2009, so I was a couple months on the job when the first delivery was due. Everything was going to go great. The prime contractor was a fourth quarter team. They were going to make it happen. And if they weren't going to make it happen, they were going to death march the entire team. And they were death marching the entire team. 16-hour days and nothing was getting done across several hundred people. By March, my boss asked me to take a much deeper role in the program. Of course, when he recruited me, he told me I didn't have to have anything to do with it, and that was part of the recruiting pitch. So we had that discussion. It wasn't pleasant. I took a look. We had three assessments done, more watchers, people assessing what's going on, right? Defects were increasing, even though several $1 million a month was being focused on defect resolution. We stopped all new work. We were just doing defect resolution, and we were still finding and building more defects than we were fixing. Well, great plan, guys. So 3 months later, I had to have the next hard conversation. This was with the director of the FBI, and I said, sir, you've got 3 options. You can keep doing what you're doing, which the experts and the people who've been doing this for you for the last 5 years are going to tell you it's going to take another 6 years and another $351 million. You've already spent $400. Odds are that you're going to get the exact same result that you got over the last 5 years. I don't see any reason why doing the same thing for another 5 years won't get you a different result. Option 2, you can decrease your oversight. You can trust your prime contractor. You can give them the rest of your budget, which is what they want you to do. And they've assured us that they will deliver 70% of the program for the planned budget, and you don't get to pick the 70%. I'm going to come back to you next year after they spent all your money, and I'm going to say, sir, this is what they delivered to you. We are going to claim it as a great success, and you are going to get the same instructions I give my 3-year-old. You get what you get. Don't throw a fit. The third option is we flip this thing upside down. We recognize that regardless of our contract, regardless of the recourse and the award fee structure and all of the other controls that we think we've had in the past, the headlines still start with FBI. And every time the Washington Post and every time the New York Times and every time the Wall Street Journal writes about a major failure of a software program, they don't even put the prime contractor's name in the first paragraph. The headline is, the FBI spends the taxpayers' money on this and doesn't get anything for it. So let's take that responsibility on. Let's do this internally. Let's bring our contractors on as a partner, not as a prime. Let's work as a team, taking whatever talents and capabilities we have, apply it to the problem, and the way we're going to do this is we're going to start showing progress, and we're going to show progress every 2 weeks, and I am not going to count any activities. I am not going to count anything that's partially done. I don't care if it's partially done. It's only done if it's fully integrated, if it's got the automated tests that Mark was talking about. And the stakeholder has seen it. The customer has seen it. Oh, by the way, at this time, the guys on the program that I was talking to and the managers were telling me that people were trying to leave the program, obviously, right? There was a lot of uncertainty on the program. Not only were they leaving, they were taking the program name off of their resume. I couldn't get a stakeholder to return my call because they thought it was a joke. Right? How do you overcome that type of skepticism? How do you overcome the idea of, oh, that's just IT spending money, building what they want? They're never going to help me, and if they even think they're going to help me, it's not going to work anyway. I went out to Phoenix when we were rolling it out in the summer of 2012. And the special agent in charge, we had a quick in-brief and a quick conversation on my way into the office and on the way out of the office. And he said, all my guys, showed up or came to me, and they brought their VCF lanyards and pens, bright yellow lanyards, right? Because they thought that this was going the same way of VCF. It could be a great screen, but it's not going to work at scale, right? We proved them wrong. In July 2012, we rolled out the system to the entire FBI. We immediately reduced the time to awareness in half. The amount of time that it takes for an interview between the time the interview happens to the time that that's a digital format that I can share it with anybody who should have access to it across the law enforcement community or the intelligence community. I cut that time in half, more than half, because there's a bunch of stuff that I couldn't measure in the old system, right? We created that environment by changing the focus of the team and changing the way the team behaves. First is responsiveness, feedback, eliminate waste. More importantly, the culture of the team wasn't about, hey, don't repeat VCF, build all of these requirements perfectly and get them right out of the gate. You know what I want you to do? I want you to come in every day. I want you to give me your best. I want you to use your most creative, most innovative idea to try to solve this problem, and then we're going to go check it. And I can guarantee you that I can allow a group of innovators in the basement of the Hoover building to go build things and test them faster than we can plan on. Anybody from the oversight committee, oversight groups, the standard oversight groups around here, inspector generals, GAOs, any of those folks in the room?
To sessions like this.
Okay. So one of the ways that we did this is my team said, you can't do that. The IG will crucify us. So they won't crucify you. They'll crucify me. They don't know who you are. Right? They'll put my name in the report. I'll take that risk. And here's how I'm going to mitigate that risk. Not by writing them another report, not by writing them another special brief. I'm going to write that risk because I'm going to put my confidence in you. That you can write code faster than they can write reports. So we're going to get their draft when they have to give us our draft. And as they go through the official audit process, if they have something legitimate in their draft, we will fix it before they get back to the review process. And in the review process, I'll say that's not factually accurate anymore. Responsiveness, measurement, right? How do we make that happen? It can happen in government. We've shown that it can happen in government. The FBI spent $570 million between VCF and Sentinel up to 2010. We started an agile 2-week process in October 2010. In July 2012, we were done, functionally done. $30 million, 20 months, right? I mean, that is just not even in the same magnitude, right? We can do that across government if we engage our teammates, if we're all working on delivering that value proposition and focusing on how are we going to make our government better. We have that ownership. As leaders, we own the risk, right? It's our names that are going to be in the IG report. Okay, that's fine. And so in the corporate sector, they would say that's why you get paid the big bucks. I don't know if they could say that for government employees, but right? Let's do it. And I'm not asking you to perform miracles. It's not magic, regardless of what Mark says. Right? It's hard work. It's daily discipline, and it's focus. Focusing on delivering value, and as you're delivering value, making sure that you understand how to be responsive to changes, how you understand how to measure what you've done and whether it's effective or not, whether you're making the impact that you desire. Because you're going to be wrong just as many times as you would be with a plan. But now you have something that is functional and integrated and tested, and you can prove whether or not it works, and if it doesn't work, change it. And you can change it faster than you can write about it.
Great.
So I think everybody can see there's a real difference in the way that I approach things and the way that Jeff approaches things, and I would characterize it like this. He calls his boss sir. As a New Yorker, I was just sort of brought up to be rude to everybody. Aside from that, I can't really disagree with too much there.
So let's give a quick hand to our first two panelists. So, like Jeff and Mark said, let's get to work. So on either side of our room, we've got a pre-filled out matrix of a maturity model around continuous delivery. So what I'd like you to do, and Brian and I and the others will be circulating around, is with your table, maybe walk up there, take a look. You've got sticky notes. Please fill out and start to fill out what more we can get working from the ideas to what are the levels of maturity and how can we demonstrate those levels of maturity. I'm going to give you about 20 minutes, then we'll come back and we'll hear from our other two speakers, and then we'll have one more breakout session. So please, feel free to jump up there and get involved. Awesome, thank you. Thank you, sir. Great. We have to disagree, right?
I'll kick off the next one. I'll be right up short.
Yes. Okay. I love the fact that you did a
Yes.
for cycle. Is it faster than the IG writer report? We got it.
What's that? I'm the Chief Technology Officer for Census, IT side of the house. It's the architecture and infrastructure. My team does not run the infrastructure, it's not operational, but we help with the IT roadmaps and the standards, running an architecture review board, those types of things. It's kind of strategic, logical, up to the logical design, not the physical design. And also an innovation lab. Agility is very much part of that, and we instantiate that into our SDLC process, and also to our lab as an opportunity to do agile development. Yeah, yes, and yeah, a lot of sort of organization have modeled that. So. Yep. You had a hackathon the other day or something. I just couldn't attend that. Yes. Yeah, I met him. Yes. We came to your facility. We were supposed to have a follow-up, but he had some kind of a family emergency, and we couldn't. We came when they did the ribbon cutting ceremony, and we were there for that. Very nice. Haven't figured out the use of the drone there in the corner yet, but. Oh, okay. Okay. Got it. Right. Yes, yes. I do want to visit the facility again with some other folks. There was somebody who showed up. Jeff Press from Commerce went there. But,
yeah, I know.
Well, I was saying, I don't know if you have Wi-Fi, but it's on the playbook. Yeah, it's on the digital. I think sure.
What? customer service paragraph, or user information about the process? How do you get
Engaging user community. But educate them from the content.
Second breakdown. That's right.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, it's okay.
That's the part.
No, I really I actually, my dad just, he was here this weekend. He was at, I don't know if he's in that, I mean, I know he's a bit involved in this state, but not as much as like, yeah, at some point, I just don't know if he's there. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, just trying. Do you need Greg? Okay, because he's okay. That's it. Yeah.
We've got about 5 more minutes in the breakout. We'll come back to our second 2 speakers.
Good, how are you?
I know exactly right. Thank God for coffee.
My alarm went off the walk, but now I know it's like,
You have your dog here? Oh, you do actually do. I thought you meant back at home.
you were watching the activity feed I posted.
Oh, you did? Oh, I do.
The day today.
I was watching. I didn't see that.
About 3 more minutes, and then we'll get back for our last 2 speakers.
People started texting here. Oh, are you a mom? And I'm like, who are you? I don't know. Yeah, I've only had it to me.
You ever crank down over there? I mean, seriously, sometimes we get those really big bump every 10 years.
Well, there's lots of stuff that goes in between those 10 years.
Oh, absolutely. That's the big thing. You don't know.
So I joined in 2010 after the last 2 years.
Finding the type of master. It's intentionally before you have that. I know you have. I was gonna say, I still remember we were at the last night. No. I wasn't involved. Okay. No, I still remember. I actually never went on 2 last night.
For years and years, they focused on tests and also
Right. It's hard going out.
it's hard time now.
Trying to, but
Don't forget me.
trying to settle in and breathe, but then
How can you go to FDA?
55 different directions coming here and everything, so it's kind of like, it's good. I'm liking it a lot. I'm certainly enjoying, the experience and all the support, being able to come here. Oh yeah. Did you tell you Rusty's out?
He works for FDA. And he works on your
Yeah.
second project. I think he's now Mr. John. He's actually
That's what I like about Rusty.
the young guy should look about it. He does. Big budget.
You gotta be aware.
He was an industry.
One of the opportunities to pursue, but, I don't know what the situation was. He's a bright guy. He likes to just get his shit done.
Spirit of maturity.
He wants to be more focused on the value that he brings. Oh, okay. Oh yeah, I understand. I thought you said no. I thought you meant like I thought you meant like Rusty has a really salary position. Actually, he's a nice I was gonna say that's I understand if you have in this environment where it's really about Flash is not the only
One of the jobs I had.
Really? I was just saying,
all medical
I've worked with one
What was fun about it though is they were integrating their product. If I could, sorry to interrupt, Mark, but if we could get everyone back to their seats and we'll get to our last 2 speakers and then finish out with the final breakout.
Slides for this or the next
No,
one,
no
right?
slides. No slides for all 3 of our.
Okay.
Fun about the scientists and the doctors and so on is you're never done. There's always
I'll kick it off.
Well, making your way back to our seats, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Avi, who's going to walk through his experience and thoughts on continuous delivery. And then Kamal will come in and close us out, and then we'll get back into our breakouts. So if you can take your seats and keep the conversation down, please.
All right, I guess we'll get started. So good morning again, Avi Bender at the U.S. Census Bureau. It was really an interesting discussion a few minutes ago. When I interview people for a job, I always ask them the same question, and that is, what is your sweet spot? Because I think everyone needs to understand their center of gravity. And I think being customer-oriented, both internally and externally, is really critical. I mean, just specific examples of what we've done at the Bureau have been creating an API-first policy both internally and externally. And what that means is understanding engagement with customers within the organization and externally. So our API is used for external dissemination, but our APIs are also used internally for systems integration. We've developed an EA program that looks at capabilities, it looks at requirements and aggregating those as capabilities to then deliver services, shared services. And at the end of shared services are actual platforms to deliver on those capabilities, taking very much a platform approach. And then in addition to that, having an innovation and incubation program. I mention these things is because when you're leading change, and what I've done personally in my career has really been leading change both in the private sector and in the government. What I've found out is that when you join an organization, every organization is different. Different politics, different culture, different capabilities, different maturity models. It's never a clear-cut recipe book of how to do things. I think we have some really great guiding principles, but ultimately it is about you, your center of gravity, and understanding how to connect the dots within an organization. And I think we all need to step back and understand, what business are we in? Are we in the business of filling out forms, methodologies? Are we in the business of making sure all the civic documents in place? I think we really fundamentally need to understand who we're serving in the public. And I think that type of an orientation is critical because it helps drive innovation. So for example, if you're trying to, all of us are data-centric organizations. So if you're trying to find better ways of collecting, processing, and disseminating information, ultimately you'd like to have a good API to deliver that to the public. If you have that excellent API, then think about that. You would have to reverse engineer that whole process to the very beginning of when you started to collect that information. So API sounds like, well, that's a dissemination thing, that's kind of a cool digital service thing, but we've got other stuff to work with. No, not really. What you need to be thinking about is key catalysts for change. You don't need 50 things to work on. You just need 3 or 4 very strategic initiatives. And it's those initiatives that then help connect all the dots. And what I mean by connecting the dots is, if you look at the program for this session today, there are lots of interesting breakout. There's one on innovation and cultural aspects. There's one on continuous delivery, that's us. There are other things. But you know what? The delivery, the engage, the enable, these are all related. So the true innovation is how you're able to orchestrate these processes within the uniqueness of your individual organization. That's why I went back to the interview question, because when I look at myself personally, it's always been about leading change, parachuting into some place where I know nothing about the business, and all of you have heard this, whether contractors or internal folks, you've always heard, you don't really know our business, right? So that is sort of a continuous journey and struggle, and the only way to address that is really by identifying mission-critical work streams that then take all of these great guiding principles and bring them together. So at the beginning, I also mentioned that what I like about this session, it's really about getting things done. And getting things done, again, is very, very mission-oriented. So just a really quick example about what the U.S. Census Bureau does and how all of these are applied. So typically, many of you know the Bureau as we have this big census every 10 years. But in between, we have lots of other stuff going on, believe me, because we do surveys, economic surveys, demographic surveys. In fact, we're one of the largest service providers in the federal government for other agencies represented here. So we know how to collect data and so forth. And we have done that effectively because of our brand and integrity and the quality of our data over time. Now, between now and the next 2020, we're going to have to save taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars through modernization. And so what do all these things have to do with how we operate? Well, it's actually pretty important because lots of words about people, process, and technology, but I think it is possible to take a key catalyst for change, segment architectures being one example, that look at the data collection and processing aspects, and another segment architecture at the data dissemination. Segment architecture sounds technical, but it's not. Segment architecture actually looks at security, at data, at cultural issues. It requires subject matter experts to help you figure out where you are today, where is it that you want to be, and the transitional state. That is a way of continuous delivery and engagement, because what you're doing is, you're not doing a segment architecture, you're fostering a conversation. This is really about engaging internal and external customers about conversation. Our API, internally it's important about fostering a conversation about how we integrate system in a much more agile approach to promote interoperability and flexibility and the scalability of the systems that we will need for 2020. The API externally, in the way we disseminate our data, is a vehicle for a conversation with developers, because that's our touch point with the public. They're the ones that are actually using our data to unlock its true value, to drive economic growth, to drive entrepreneurship, right? So you have to think about your value chain and what it is that you're doing. And the key in continuous delivery is not to look at it in a highly fragmented way, but it's really part of a major continuum. And if you take that orientation and you frame future problems as opportunities, then you'll be able to truly lead change. I know we've also talked about, you get the OMB directives and you get oversight directives and all that. Fundamentally, I view those as unbelievable opportunities, because basically what they're saying is, hey, agencies, could you apply common sense as you do your work? And those directives should not be looked at as check the box, prescription, I got to do this because then I got to get back to my work. Understand how to take all of these points and then leverage them to lead change. And I pretty much will summarize that individually we may be technical specialists, we may be in marketing and sales, I'm the CTO. I really consider myself more of a chief transformation officer. I'm not a hardcore techie by profession. I spent time in industry and media entertainment and energy and many other segments. But what I've always come across is you really need to understand how to connect the dots and take a holistic view of your organization and engage with customers internally and externally to develop significant work streams to enable change.
So my name is Kamal Haram. I'm, like I said earlier, I'm with the FDA. I'm actually work for a center that regulates the medical device industry. I'm actually new to the federal government, done some agile development in the past, actually been through the whole stack, and I've seen the problems and some of the contract issues. And the thing I wanted to share with you today is something that I want to hit off that Jeff talked about earlier, about the idea of, you don't bring in a prime, you bring in a partner. In my center, actually, we're taking this a little, one step lower. When we think about the agility, we don't just think about the processes and the automation and kind of like the agile out of the box that we all know about. We think of it as, as he said, in terms of how do you engage and who do you engage. The work that my center does is very scientific in nature. So the tools that need to be developed are very, it's not the tools that I would understand as a technologist or as a business analyst or as a manager. So the model which we're working with in my center is the idea of, how do you engage these scientists into something called citizen developers? And what platforms or software do we use that can actually help us engage them? So like I said earlier, I'm in charge of standing up a program with my center to use these platforms as a service and software as a service. But the thing that I've been actually really spending a lot of time on is really how do you actually support the citizen developers by not creating a new process or, I think I said that little dirty word earlier about governance, but my goal really about governance is not so much about blocking, but it's really about how do you actually enable this. So we talk about automation, and I'll check my code in and goes in, and it triggers a lot of processes and goes live. How do you do that when you're using software as a service? If you use your Gmail today, you go change the color, it changes right away. There's no automation in the way. There's no process that you need to go through. And those are some of the challenges when we think about agility and working with our vendors as partners is, the contracting for that or the acquisition for that is very different. We're not asking for someone to come build tools for us. We're asking somebody perhaps to come, shepherd a process through, enable these, smart people to actually that know their business very well to help us build these user interfaces or these user experiences. The other area that we're spending a lot of time on in my center is really engaging with the industry, to make sure that we're providing them the service that they need to be able to clear their medical devices. My center director talks about if we don't do this really well, they're going to go to Europe. And you and I, as patients, we're not going to have that medical device when we need it. So we often talk about the Disney experience. They're not going to leave without being satisfied. That's the model we're trying to follow in my center is, we want the medical industry to be able to bring their medical devices here, their innovation here, but how do we do that? Our government processes and security processes and acquisition don't really allow us to do that because there's so many hurdles. So this is really some of the challenges we think about when we think about agility and working with our scientists and business analysts and the whole stack. I'll just sum up with this example. Why agility and this citizen development model is so important to us. Recently, we had done an experiment with a couple of management analysts that are trying to solve this really hard problem for them, and they've tried it for many years, using spreadsheets and SharePoint and email. And I think what they've shared with us is taking them 4 years, and there's no solution to this problem. And we went to this experiment of using an agile process, using a platform as a service to enable them to do this, and they've been able to solve this problem within 2 weeks. So we're taking this seed and we're saying, how do we take this seed and plant it everywhere? And that's how we look at agility where I am.
Kamal, Avi, thank you so much for your experiences. We're going to break out again for a little bit shorter time, about 15 minutes, with the focus being on, getting the mic to work, with the focus being on what are we missing? We've got 5 different plays we laid out. Are there any ideas that are missing from things we ought to be doing as part of a maturity model for continuous delivery? And then I'm going to bring you right back for a very short wrap-up and have each of our panelists give us 1-sentence takeaways for you to take away with you as you go through the rest of the day. Thanks.
I'm calling one of the wall. So, when did you folks are going to ask you some questions. I know they were growing large.
No idea. I was down the ball on that myself.
Very eclectic. Yeah.
One of the characteristics that we're missing out that we should be thinking about how do you...
You can get her. It's cool. Oh, did you? You whacked me this morning.
Are there areas is there an area of continuous delivery that's not open that so what's not on here that shouldn't be on here? How do you what are the housing and what's the tax? We started by filling for example, we're looking at I think they're all around the vision. Or actually, if you have them, just grab them off and right. If you've got new ideas, just grab it right away.
On a day you guys say it's
Who needs an extra?
Starts right away.
So, can you really do that when you're in full
Yeah, see, it doesn't
jet gold mode? Can you look at alternatives tools and change them out? How does that
Obviously, you know a little bit about us. The answer is definitely we're actually doing it. So I know it's, for example, we all of our miscellaneous side of academic source, nowhere sort of thing. And we are designing it to be a little bit unstable for our needs. So we're working on replacing the gravity on the female to see that works better for us. And this is usually changing what products become part of our build pipeline. We're doing something similar with how we integrate PDFs. Not quite happy with the scaling language. So we're looking at all the other approaches there. That we found it was a little bit hard to figure out the mechanics of how to do it. We decided. So as an environment with our development contractors providing a fee for your teams. And so we have a system of teams plus our fixed contractor that we do the integration of codes. And we added to that mix our valid contractor, architecture design services, again a small team, not to impose standards on the other hand, but to generate design ideas. To get the team to think about how do we evolve the design in good ways, to do a little research, to think out, make sure it's more consistent with everything else we've got in enterprise. So our apps team has been working with developers on how to replace academic rapid empty, they research other options. They looked into what would be involved in this transition, and all of that just as a service for the development community. We're actually wanting to
So within the 6 framework, can you really continue as that on the slide as well?
I mean, in principle, it's currently nothing. So with a well-architected product, it's easy to pull out one time and take in something else. And the fixed team is responsible for putting together the build process and the deployment process. And most of it's based on a repository. The repository of self-product we're using in the repository, and then all the deployment is done from there. Different products in the repository. Well, it's just different projects that we're doing. Depending on the transformation is project, and there we have the entire program from the program office, etc. The IT. They provide a product owner for the entire product, and sub-product owners for the business for automated development. And we have a bunch of subject matter experts who are detailed with the programs who are working with the developers. Every piece of code that's developed is used by a subject matter expert. I think the most important thing that DevOps has is that feedback from production. Right? The idea is you get your feedback in the development process. It's kind of standard Agile. Once it's deployed, we've got a lot of monitoring tools. and the developers are watching them on their tools to see how things are performing in production. And we're getting business metrics out of it as well. How quickly are we communicating them? That gives the developers a lot of information about how to run the system and the objective and metric is. But then we also have feedback from our help desk, from our customer service hotline, and from people out in the field who are using the software. The help desk and the customer service hotline, you can see if the thing is there. If you want to know what sorts of things people are as well. All of that feeds back into the development process.
Very difficult session. So it's very difficult to be right where we're basic stuff. So quite get that down. Look at your organization. And you tell me a computing inventory of issues. Probably not for the most part. So let's start with a good business. What application do you have? And why do we support what you're doing? Then look at the client that these applications are being served. These applications are going to talk to how do you make the agency how well the business mission to serve the public. We spend a lot of time on housing decisions. So one way to roll it out of that is to basically what I mentioned. What is the mission of your organization? What are the capabilities of my clients that you need? And each of the individual patterns for infrastructure, patterns to knowledge aggregate those, come up with a series of more services. A real simple example of infrastructure does it for collaboration and knowledge management and infrastructure. So what's the part of that is I started 500 things and reduced them to maybe 50 or less platforms. Once you define those platforms, then you begin to think about the costs and the build versus buy decision. If I invest in SharePoint, then I can invest 16 or 20 of these capabilities. I have multiple documents. In terms of creating a single data management system or repository, I focus essentially on that. I'm actually now also looking at all the so it's really how you approach the process. We need all of productivity and low the last thing about that is that a lot of that actually started with strategic planning. In most organizations, the strategic plan is write the documents, publish it. Maybe you would have to do quarterly checkup to realign the plan, and then you rework. What is that? The plan is the roadmap. The plan should be the roadmap. By virtue of the fact that you're working with the executives and the the reason we're all here is because we're looking for the organization. So it's really connecting these types of dots and not looking at it in a very discrete way. So it's strategically get that very high level strategic documents, and then at the practical level, think about how is we define separate architecture for activity and subject matter responsible for the mission. So that's the coach responsible for the mission. Essentially, we now have a methodology to ultimately Right, I'll put it in that, yeah, that's why I give you the example of the API. More specific package, so it's really, I would say, the strategy, implementation approach, creating a framework. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen after the technical side. It has to be a every organization is different.
The census Bureau is a physical organization, it's academic, it's highly collaborative, and there's a lot of
very large, very fragmented. So we, as an example of how we measure outcome, many companies across the United States are using track our data shut off the API, basically shutting off the state of the screen, so we see how much data. Very mindful that we'll go straight it's not about operational efficiency, effectiveness, and innovation. No, the two go hand in hand. You can't innovate if you don't have operational efficiency and effectiveness.
I think in a way, the one place where we are exactly on I think what and for customers, right? You care about whether your API is actually useful to people, and that informs everything, moving back in the process of the stream, which is very much my approach as well. I think where we get there, and we have a lot to do with work that we do, or business situation. I would start the API by not doing anything, and at all, but making an API that gives you access to a lot of data. And then I would see how you react. And then I change my API based on that. To try to get towards something that will work. That's my kind of approach. I think you take a very enterprise architecture, let's think carefully.
Right, but some of that, the answer to the actually goes back to the question. So it's a little bit about that. Going on, we get one of the common strategic plan, PDI. Look at strategic goal and system data organizations. That's what it started. That's what it's pushing. This is now we're looking at some results to what is the skill set from the ACT-IAC. In addition to our API, we have put a portion of the API. So we're providing all of you
So if they need to use anything else, then like on their belt, there's some
well, we're asking these questions because actually those questions I know you've got great content. Pull everybody back to their seats and we'll give you what it sounds like. Thank you. One bite to
I've got plenty of them for you. I could go on and on that subject.
It's more cultural or just?
And we need Jeff. Well, while Jeff's making his way back to the front for one session, I'd like to thank all of you, both our speakers and all of the participants. This was a very active and engaging session. So to close out, I'd like to ask each of you to just give us one sentence about continuous delivery. If you can, this is the challenge, to kind of capture what we've done here or what thought you may not have yet gotten out to the crowd. So I'm going to start with Mark.
Good. Start with the troublemaker who wants to make an observation as well as give one sentence. So observation, it's unbelievable how fast we are changing things in the government, and I measure that by the fact that a lot of the conversation today was about how you get from 3-month release cycles to daily release cycles. A year ago, we were arguing about whether you should have 6-year release cycles or be agile and have 3-month release cycles, right? It's amazing how fast the change is happening here. So my one sentence wrap up is Jeff is completely wrong. It is magic. When you figure out how to get these things in place, you can do all of these amazing things that you never thought you could do. Like all of a sudden the president has a new initiative and everybody's asking the IT organization, how long is it going to take you to get around to implementing that initiative? And you say, we've already deployed the first deployment for it. It's magic. It's great stuff once you've done it.
Oh, all right. So I think one takeaway, if you take a customer-centric approach, understanding your internal customers and external customers, and look at that point of intersection where you need to really satisfy them, I think that will help you frame the conversation that you need to have within your organization in order to deliver, continuously. We all have our governance processes and agile methodology and various guiding principles, but my advice is really understand your own personal center of gravity. What is your sweet spot so that you can actually be a change agent within your organization. But when you do that, look at things from a holistic perspective. Don't disregard your strategic plan as basically some document that sits on the shelf and collects dust. Look at that as really a strong mission document and use that to your advantage to engage with the technologies and the business individuals, and most importantly, have the conversation about leading change.
Kamal?
I think the one thing I would say that's really important when you think about continuous delivery is also to think about change management. These things that we're delivering are going to someone that's going to have to use, whether it's an internal customer or an external customer. So engaging with them really early on in the process. I'm not talking about the product owner or the business analyst. I'm talking about the users in the basement that will be using these. I think that's really one thing you can't really ignore if you want your process to be successful.
Jeff, tell us how Mark is all wrong.
We have to focus on the outcomes. What are we trying to achieve? And we all have something to bring to the table. Mike Walsh this morning said 70% of the organization isn't bringing it. Right? If there is magic in this, it's because we've enabled the entire workforce to bring their talents to the table. We've enabled them to collaborate on what's important to have an outcome in a meaningful time frame. Because we frankly don't think well about delivering something 6 years into the future. I haven't been in a job for 6 years in my life, right? Now we can all talk about I'll talk offline about the reasons for that, whether it's good or bad, right? But 6 years is a long time, right? 6 months can be a long time. And frankly, when the cycle times get that long, we fall into old habits. We fall into old, bad habits of spending our time writing documents in a silo that it isn't a collaboration and a participation. Eisenhower said about D-Day, plans are useless. The act of planning is invaluable. The document isn't the value. The collaboration with the people, the getting everybody to bring it every day, that's what's valuable about these processes. That's what brings the magic. That's why you stay at Disney, because people are engaged. And so how do we use these tools? How do we use these processes? How do we leverage governance to bring their value and their perspective of risk management to the table in a valuable way? Focus on the outcomes. Understand the processes. The processes are tools. All models are wrong, some are useful. All tools are good, some are useful. Focus on the strengths, focus on the tools that work for the situation that you're in. Avi talked a lot about fit and culture, right? In global organizations, when I was in the Navy, I could do a lot of things through electronic means and remote means. In global financial services, it worked again. Conference calls could be invaluable. I could get a lot done. In the FBI, we're a face-to-face organization. It's a different tool bag. Use the different tool bag. Take that 70% of the workforce that isn't engaged and make them important. Make them valuable, engage them. When you go from 30% to 40%, you just had a 33% increase in productivity. You still have 60% of the workforce's opportunities.
It's magic.
Hey, you might be getting the magic. Right? Disneyland magic.
Well, give a round of applause to our panels and to all of yourselves for participating. Thank you.
Oh, you guys know each other?
How are you doing?
Fair enough, fair enough. I wasn't aware. Or they're on the side of caution, try to make it.
Well, no, it's always, it's better to do that in these environments, because then you do the assumption and then they're just standing there. Hey, Bob. Is that down?
Yeah, we're going back.
I think Van was on one line.
No.
Oh, okay. I was going to say. I don't know if you want, okay, you're right. I don't know if you want the lipstick one.
The lipstick one's usually a good call for
Right?
women,
Right?
Yeah, I was going to say, for me, that might raise some questions.
You know, all of your
might
lipstick
have
came
something
off.
to address.
My wife's here.
Looking at that. we have the Center for Applied Technology, the CAB, and then they always have some stuff right now for Samsung and I still can be the terminal camera that I have. It also includes security issues, privacy, location-based services. Can't hear that. That's just